healthcare delivery. That's why we have a video presentation here, but we would not want to preempt the discussion. That's why if you want a video clippings on this, then we can give you later on. Okay. So first of all, allow me to introduce myself. I am Jay Canieda, a faculty also in the College of Nursing of Cebu Normal University. I will be your moderator and at the same time the workshop facilitator for this session. Well, as we all know, disaster has become a byword in our local scenario for the past months, from Luzon to Mindanao. Several calamities that resulted to tremendous disaster. To name some, of course, the 7.2 magnitude earthquake, the Typhoon Yolanda, which is considered the strongest typhoon in the history, Typhoon Glenda, and at least wala naglandfall si Henry, si Jose, si Inday. At least, pasalamat na wala diri sa Pilipinas. Niagi lang siya. Pero the big questions are, what's next? Who's next? And are we prepared? That's why the main objective for this session is to encourage us, students, professionals, to shape an organized response to emergency and healthcare delivery as future relief workers, as well as to promote further knowledge on the aspect of relief during post and late emergency phase, and also to offer a global picture of the multi-sectoral approach to humanitarian and the situation we should be facing on the field. It may be now or it may be in the future. So to introduce the main speaker, allow me to do this. She holds a postgraduate degree of Masters in Public Administration and currently the Training Division of Office of Civil Defense, Region 7. Give her a big round of applause, Ms. Lisa Joy Hernandez.
Okay, thank you so much, Sir Jake. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Loud ra akong voice. Loud pa, kaya ako man ka-start. Well, anyway, murag, pwede na ako mag-Cebuano, English, Waray, Ilonggo, murag national di siya eh. Okay, but mostly from Region 7. Pwede lang ako makuha kung how many are from Region 7? Region 7. Majority. Anak dyan na, kay host ko man, host region. Anyway, I knew some of you as nakoy friends, no, from Chongwa, si Ma'am, no, partner gihapon nato during emergency situation. So for this afternoon, our topic for this afternoon, first, we will know the rest profile of our Philippines. Walang kamatayang ring of fire, di ba? Okay, so plus we have to have this building emergency evacuation plan on earthquake scenario. Kaya ko diri, kaya lisod pag CGO, lingi. Okay. So, allow me to read some definitions before we go on to our topic. So, as disaster defined as a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or a society involving widespread human, material, economic, and environmental losses and impact which exceed the ability of the affected community or society to cope using its own resources. So, ang haba ng definition ng disaster. But simply, disaster means the loss of lives and properties, and of course, disruption of our daily activities. So, yan yung disaster. Then, hazard, a dangerous phenomenon, substance, human activity or condition that may cause the loss of life, injury, or other health impacts, property damages, loss of livelihood and services, social and economic disruptions, or environmental damage. So, hazard. So, what if I say typhoon? Si Henry. Ano ba yung typhoon na hindi naglalandfall sa atin? Henry. If Henry hindi naglalandfall sa atin, ano bang tawag doon? Disaster na or hazard pa? Hazard. Okay, so yung 3 na nalasa sa Japan. Actually, Henry kills around 10 people already in Japan. Okay. Hello. Vulnerability, the characteristics and circumstances of community, system or asset that makes susceptible to damaging effects of hazard. So vulnerability. So meaning the vulnerable people. Who are those vulnerable during disaster? Kinsa man jud ang mga tao nga most vulnerable when we talk of disaster? Wala? Kitang-tanan. Okay, so vulnerable and marginalized groups, those that face higher exposure, meaning higher exposure to disaster risk and poverty, including but not limited to women. We have the children, the elderly, and definitely able people and these ethnic minorities. So the Philippine situation. So as Hydromet, the Philippines lies east of the Pacific Typhoon Belt. No? The typhoon originating from this western North Pacific generally moves easterly or northeasterly and most often enters our PAR or the Philippine area of responsibility. This explains why we have this 20, at least 20 to 22 tropical cyclones per year. And 5 of that are destructive. So lately we attended like parang forum siya on Met. So we have an expert from other countries and they said Philippines daw will experience fewer magkakonti daw yung ating typhoon. Sabi ng expert na yun. Ang tanong naman sa amin, papayag ba kayo na ang 22 maghintay na lang? Of course, papayag tayo niyan. Provided, meron pa lang pros and cons noon. Kung konti na lang siya, mostly mas stronger. So, new normal na according to Pag-asa ito na-experience natin ngayon na mga typhoons. So, lahat na papasok na typhoons, especially yung magpapasok sa Philippine area of responsibility natin, most probably will have damages. Okay, so sa geographical locations of our country, the Philippines is vulnerable to almost all types of natural hazards because of our geographical location. Where are we situated? Sa walang kamatayang ring of fire. Ever since elementary pa, gagmay pa kahit ng bata, we already know this so-called ring of fire. Unsa man yung gitawag nila nga ring of fire. This area were 2 major plates. The Philippine Sea Plate, the Eurasian Plate meets and is highly prone to earthquake and volcanic eruptions. So this is it. So we are situated in the so-called ring of fire. As sa ng Pilipinas, we are situated in this area. Here, nasa gitna talaga tayo, no? So, there are active faults and trenches. Then, active faults and trenches also are potential source of earthquakes. Okay, this explains, no? The Pacific Ring of Fire explains the existence of earthquakes, tsunamis, and around 300 volcanoes. 22 of that volcanoes are active, and that volcanoes are equally divided, no? From Luzon down to Mindanao. Okay, as the typhoon belt explains the existence of an average of 20 typhoons visiting the country every year, 5 of which are said to be very destructive. Okay, this one, diyan mga buhok ha. It's not our hair. Actually, the tracks of tropical typhoons in the western North Pacific period from 1948 to 2010. So, source from JMA, Japan Meteorological Agency. So that's why we are tinatawag nila tayong exporters of typhoons to other countries. Di niyo ba napansin, pag Taiwan papasok sa park, they will release to Taiwan, Japan, and other countries. So that's why we are the exporters of typhoon. Okay, climate change. Climate change, increasing global temperatures and rising sea level further leads to worsening occurrences and impacts to disaster. So pumasok pa, meron pa mga disaster. Sabi nga nila, we are just like a menu. We are just, para tayong restaurant, no? Name lang all the disaster we want. We can offer that one to them. Then, simply, these pictures explains the global warming. Ano bang kasalanan ng Mother Earth? Why we did this to her? So this is what we did. Sino bang gumagawa niyan? Tayo pa rin. Global warming is a globally problem, but the solution of that is we as individual can participate because we made that, therefore we will solve that problem. Okay, human-induced disaster. Since time of memorial, the Philippines is affected by wars, double strife, internal conflicts, and of course, the terrorism. Panahon pa ni Kupong we already experienced this kind of calamities. Then, hazards, whether natural hazard or human-induced incidents, abound in the Philippines. The impact of natural hazards are further aggravated climate change. Then, examples of human-induced hazard. We have, of course, dito lang sa Pilipinas ito, SARS outbreak 2006. We have the stampede, the Wawawi stampede incident 2006. We have hostage taking, the Reno Grandstand hostage taking crisis in 2010. We have the terrorism, Zamboanga crisis last year. Then different fire incidents around the country, especially on the highly urbanized cities we're in. Mga barangays are dikit-dikit, they are prone to fire incidents. The other day lang, Cebu City experiences 3 fire incidents lang in one day. So, ang dami namin ngayong mga displaced people, They are living in mga gym because they are affected by fire. Okay, for natural hazards, number 1 natin is yung flood. Followed by storms, typhoons, and storm surges, we have earthquakes. Earthquake ngayon is trending, Kung sa ano pa yan? Internet, trending yung ating earthquake. Volcanic eruptions. We have climatic variabilities, the La Nina and El Nino. But may good news tayo, according to Pag-asa, if El Nino actually El Nino daw started by June pa. But nakita nila hindi naman masyado. But until December, pag wala pag El Nino, El Nino is gone already. So wala tayong El Nino. But still, we experience at least 32 degrees for our winter today. Landslides, tsunamis, and ground subsidence. So as the Philippine hazard is clear, we have 20 to 22 typhoons per year. 5 of that are active. Around 300 volcanoes, 22 of that are active also. Prone to earthquake because we are lying across the Pacific Ring of Fire. 30,000 plus kilometers of coastal lines. Coastline that makes it vulnerable to tsunami. Plus, the past 20 years, at least 31,000 people have been killed and 94 million have been affected by natural disasters alone. So our capacity, disasters, especially those caused by natural hazards, cannot ultimately be controlled and avoided. However, the underlying vulnerabilities can be managed by increasing capacities. That's why we will be capacitating the local government unit because they are the front line during emergency situation. And we are the partner of that LGUs. And dito tayo ngayon because we form part as their partner during emergency on the medical aspects. Okay, this simply how capacitated the LGU or the local government units Or for this particular slides, I will show you there are three actually barangays that prone to a hazard. The hazard is this big boulder up there. But these three barangays, they have their own initiative to make this barangay safe. So for this barangay, Barangay Busil is the most prone one. Why? Because if these people that will go directly to this barangay, most probably their population are affected. So what the Barangay Disaster Council did for this barangay, we'll see this one. This is the onion cheese. It's a barrier, no? That would protect them. Di lang, di nga naman masyadong malaki, no? But they have the initiative. Plus, they have this. It's a code of monitoring, a sort of monitoring to oversee the operations of that particular border. Plus, ulit taga-Pasil, no? Okay, this is part of their security, parang early warning system nila for this barangay. So how ready this barangay are? Diba? Plus, of course, wala, hindi naman mawawala yan, the resources. Kailangan talaga natin yan, no? Kahit saan tayo magpunta. So we need these resources. So that barangay is very capacitated, no? When it comes to disaster preparedness and as well as mitigation. So they will transfer their mga constituents down to the safest barangay so that di naman sila affected by that disasters. So ang problema lang ng kapitan dyan, wala na siyang butante. Wala na mag-vote sa kanya on the next elections. Joke lang. Balik na sila. Okay. So applying. So for that slide, applying the DRR formula, disaster risk reduction formula, we have the R as rest. H is hazard times vulnerability obsidian by the capacity. Ano ba yung capacity ng isang LGU to cope up with that particular disaster? To lessen the impact of the disaster, to lessen the losses of lives and properties. So they have their own initiatives. Okay, vulnerability. There are also the imminent problems brought about by the vulnerabilities which increase disaster risk. What are these? Poor construction of houses. Well then, no? We have non-compliance with the building codes. Ang daming mga buildings na parang kabuti na lang, no? Di na tayo lalayo dito sa amin. Here in Cebu, grabe ang mga buildings, no? Everywhere, makikita na there are high-rise buildings and these buildings, di natin masasabi that they are in compliance with our building codes of the Philippines. But if they comply, siguro, di natin ma-assure that they are safe during emergencies. And appropriate location of houses along the coastlines, we have the fault lines and landslide-prone areas. Okay. Another one, this fast-growing population. 100 million Filipinos already now. No? Last July ba yun? Pinanganak ng 100 million Filipinos. Okay. Urbanization, environmental degradation, then pollution, of course. No? Poor enforcement of DRRM and CCE policies and regulations. Then unwillingness of some people to cooperate with our local government unit. Kamot ni sila eh. Kung may disaster, saka sila hindi ng tulong. Minsan nga, yung iba hindi na mag-i-evacuate. Why? Because they have left someone, or their mga pets, mga animals, no? Mga mabiyaan nila dito sa pwede mag-evacuate. Kahit we impose the forced evacuation. Okay, risk. To reduce disaster risk, we need to invest on increasing capacities to the communities using two. No, there are two approaches to reduce the disaster risk. What are those capacities? We have these structural and non-structural approaches. So for structural approaches, relocation of informal settlers. Kaya ang big question, saan ba natin i-relocate our government can afford to relocate. But even if we relocate those people, tendency manggod, babalik at babalik din sila kung saan sila kukuha ng kanilang hanapbuhay. Like for example, we'll put an example in Talisay. Talisay is storm surge area even if without typhoon. So, ang gagawin ng government yan, i-relocate nila yung mga tao. Sa bundok naman yung relocation because doon lang pwede tayo makabili ng mas cheaper na land. But unfortunately, mag-relocate ka, bibigyan po ka ng pera para man lang talagang makapag-start sila. But pag naubos na yung kanilang pera, babalik at babalik din sila dun sa areas wherein they will find their living. So yun yung problema, big problem for the government. So what else? We have fortification of buildings, houses, and other infrastructure. So i-retrofit natin. If we found out that our buildings or infrastructures are need to be retrofitted, we have to do that. Then, construction and installation of our localized early warning system. We have lots of early warning systems na pwede natin i-install sa ating mga locality. Hindi lang sa locality establishment wherein we are situated and other places that is already also madaling makikita ng ating mga tao, madaling maririnig sa ating mga constituency. Then, increase access to the critical facilities such as hospitals and medical centers. Ano ba ibig sabihin nito? Increase access. Especially us, we are a medical health practitioners. So maybe, madali lang tayong maabot, especially those people in the ground. Isang problema dito, especially in the far-flung barangay, mahirapan talaga silang pumunta. Kasi sa akong Tagalog, kay mahirapan dyan buksawan ko. Kay kahit dyan kayo, I tried, no, to make it malumanay. But for the Cebuano, I know. Ito yung Tagalog natin. Okay, so especially for the far-flung barangay, magkalisod din, mahirapan din silang pumunta doon because of that of our health practitioners. Okay. So we have establishment of evacuation centers and warehouse for our relief goods. So ang ginawa kasi dito, we will identify. So kailangan ko maglayo-layo ito. Murang po sa nabidrama, ani? Okay. So, okay, nag-iko po. So for our evacuation or warehouse for our relief goods, actually we are advised to identify. Or we have to reposition our goods, no? Kasi yun yung problema during the typhoon Yolanda as well as the 7.2 magnitude earthquake in Bohol, problema talaga yung repositioning of goods. No, plus the assets pa, the search and rescue team that we will reposition in times of emergency, ready na siya all the time, no? So, usan ni siya ka problem nga we are going to ask from the government to solve. For non-structural, we have been streaming the DRRM and CCA into National and Local Development Plans and Program. So we'll proceed for that for the birth of our Republic Act 121, which is we already, no, sinama na namin itong CCA to the DRRM activities. Training of disaster managers and responders. We need to train our managers and responders so that in times of emergency, they can respond efficiently and effectively. So we have during our trainings. One of that is this incident command system. We have this ICS. Okay, we have ladderized training for ICS actually here in Region 7. One ano na lang namin na makakount up na kami ng isang team, no, incident management team to respond during emergency. They are part of our incident management team. So regular conduct of drills and exercises. No, we have a mandate, no, from the former President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo that we will be conducting drill exercises on school, highly urbanized cities, not highly urbanized cities, schools with private or public schools, then establishments and others, no, mga high-rise buildings to conduct a drill in a quarterly basis. Ito yung ginagawa natin. Then enforcement of DRRM policies and ordinances. This is in the local government units. We are promoting DRRM awareness and education at the community level. So we will have this community-based disaster risk reduction and management program to the barangays para makasama mo yung mga taga-barangay because they are not the front line of disaster if there is a disaster. Okay, so disaster risk reduction is about helping people become less vulnerable to disasters. Diba? They are the most vulnerable sectors when disaster strikes the children. Remember mo atong December 2004 great earthquake and tsunami in Banda Aceh, Indonesia? 12 countries affected, 300,000 people died, 3/4 of that 300,000 people are children. That's why we are, here in the Philippines, we are encouraging schools, no, especially public schools, elementary schools, to conduct trainings on what to do before, during, and after a certain calamity. So our challenges, unsa may mga hagit nato being a Filipino. Murag wa man daghan naman po dili Filipino, but being here in the Philippines, now what are our challenges? First, disaster remain our major challenge. To achieve a disaster resilient and safer community in the Philippines by next year. So mao ni atong hagit sa uban natong local government unit. Okay, natural hazard abound, no? Typhoon, landslide, everything on earth, we have that. Then climate change remain our potential risk to the country. Climate change. Then poverty and vulnerability conditions prevails. Then we have as the fast-growing population. So ito yung mga hagit natin, ito yung mga challenges natin to come up by year 2015. So what are our legal basis? We have the legal basis from PD 1566, which is more focused on disaster management. Kumbaga, minamanage lang yung disaster natin, and we anchor in this Presidential Decree 1566, no? Before. So, strengthening Philippine disaster control capability, then establishes the national program on community disaster preparedness. Puro preparedness, puro management, wala man lang reduction. So, come up the RA 10121, which born on May 27, 2010, that strengthens the Philippine disaster risk reduction and management. So meron na tayong ginagawang reduction, no? Provides for the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Framework, institutionalizes the NDRRM plan, then appropriates those funds that we have, the 5% calamity funds that we have for disaster. Actually, a short background of this is our written 121 is 21 years in the making. Si Undoy lang yung nagpagawa nito na isang law. Yung paglabas ni Undoy in 2009. That's why in 2010 it is being enacted into Republic Act. Then 6 congresses, 4 presidents yata, so ang dami, no, 21 years, so graduate na college yung anak mo if this law is being enacted. Okay, paradigm shifting from disaster relief and response to disaster risk reduction and management. From this top-down and centralized disaster management lead to bottom-up and participatory disaster risk reduction process. So makikita natin yung kaibahan niya. Dito kasi we have to see something. Lahat tayo will participate, no, para ma-realize itong plan na ito. Whereas here, we're just waiting to disaster to finish, then we will activate our disaster relief. Relief lang yun ang alam natin noon, no? From reactive to proactive approach of disaster management. Then expanding membership. So we have an expanded membership. Before, we already have the old National Disaster Council, 19 members, with the new one, 44 members. Tingnan lang natin. Kung di pa rin ganun yung mangyari. Okay, so what more most important are we We give note to government financial institution like the GSIS and SSS because kasama na nito yung mga insurances during mitigation. Then plus the one quasi-government agency, the Red Cross, then 5 LGUs leads, then of course we involve the civil society organization and one private sector organization which are not included in the old NDCC form of disaster management. So mas pinalawak siya dito sa Article 121 ngayon. So we have here now the four framework for disaster. Before this is our word with the PD 1566 which is we will focus on disaster management. Equally divided itong ating framework of disaster, but it goes up now with the Article 121 which is we will focus more, one half of this pie is more on mitigation and prevention. Why? Because preparedness pa rin natin is inati siya sa tatlo, then on the response phase, then we have the recovery. Why ganito yung nangyari? But if we prepared, so most probably if disaster comes, konti lang yung affected, then therefore we can go back, build back later for our local government units. So plus we integrate the DRR and CCA in planning and implementation to come up with a safer, adaptive, and resilient Filipino community towards a sustainable development. Ito na yung bago nating framework ngayon for disaster. Okay, so the RR Plan 2011 to 2028, we have prevention and mitigation, preparedness, we have response, rehabilitation, safer, adaptive, and sustainable development communities. Then we have these efforts, the prevention and mitigation efforts, of course, development of alarm and our early warning system. So some of this, we have the Pag-asa, the Doppler radar, multi-million Doppler radar that they have. Actually, one Doppler radar na nangyari dito sa Pag-asa is built in Yuan Samar. Then unfortunately, it was devastated by Yolanda. That cost around 1 million, 100 million, 100 million Doppler radar. So ang nangyari, pinunggutan ng ulo, nawala yan, naputol yan. So ito na lang yung natira. So ngayon, the assisted one from JICA, and it will cost around 69 million pa rin. 69 million pa rin ang cost for reconstruction of that particular Doppler radar. So wala tayong guardian angel if merong typhoon na kami dito sa, particularly in Region 7. Putol ang ulo na Doppler radar ng Pag-asa. Then, nationwide flood forecasting and monitoring. So now for the local government unit, we are advised all local government unit in Region 7, because I'm in Region 7, to monitor their areas, especially those flooded areas. Then we have here the geohazard mapping by the Mines and Geosciences Bureau, one of our efforts. Comprehensive land use planning, buildings and safety standards. So, meron tumututok doon as to the plans of their buildings. So, kung tama ba yung lupa na yung ginawa nila ng mga buildings. Then we have these engineering interventions. We have flood control structures. Then, the DOST Project NOAA. Naririnig nyo na itong DOST Project NOAA. This is the experts of the DOST personnel. Nakita ko sa kabilang room. Then, we have geohazard maps. Here, they make this geohazard mapping. From landslide susceptibility map by NGBDNR, as well as rainfall return flood simulation by Pag-asa. Then we have active faults and trenches care of by FIBOX. Then we have another DRM efforts in preparedness. Of course, the COMPLAN, contingency planning for a specific disaster. This is what we are very strict for the local government unit to come up with their contingency planning on specific disaster, because this plan would become their parang Bible na ito nila if disaster strike. Ito na yung kanilang maging Bible if there is a disaster. Ito yung plan for a specific disaster. So we have here prepositioning of equipment and supplies. We have this advice to all LGUs also and all stakeholders to have preposition of their equipment and supplies, especially the personnel who are engaged in disaster operations. The enhancement of operation and coordination centers. So we have some EOC, emergency operation centers na purely EOC lang talaga. Wala namang mga gamit na pwede natin gamitin, but we have to enhance that one in order to address all disaster risk and disaster response in an accurate and timely manner. Then organizing, training, and equipping responders. Now for the APIC, we have this get ready with our 100 people, warm bodies to cope up with urban search and rescue training in preparation of APIC. So this is form part of organizing, training, and equipping responders. We have also organizing and mobilizing community volunteers. Hindi lang lahat ng government are members. We have also these accredited community disaster volunteers that will form part of our partner during emergencies and disaster operations. Then conduct of disaster trainings, drills, and exercises. So marami tayong, we have lots of drills. We have flood drills, tsunami drills, typhoon drills, and other drills na pwede naman natin gawin. We have earthquake drills and this building emergency evacuation plan drills. Then for efforts in the response, of course, number one yan is within 24 hours of disaster, we are on the yo-yo concept, meaning you're on your own during disaster. Therefore, you help yourself, save your family before saving others. Then with that, we have to establish our search and rescue operations. Because percentage of survival when short pa ang time ng nag-disaster mo, would likely mataas yung survival probability niya. Then humanitarian aid, relief, and health services, ibibigay din natin yan for those affected by disasters. Then we have provision for temporary shelters, water, sanitations, and hygienes for our internally displaced people. Then financial assistance to victims of calamities. We're giving financial assistance to the victims of calamities. Meron tayong mga nakaangkop na figure for them. Then we have management of evacuation center, the camp management, which is we will be care of that one for the vice chair of the response, the DSWD, Department of Social Welfare and Development. Then another efforts for recovery and rehabilitation, early recovery and rehabilitation. So masituate natin na as soon as they are stricken by disaster, we situate that they can recover as early as possible para mabalik naman sa kanila yung kanilang moral na nawawala sa kanila during disasters. Then we have here reconstruction of damaged houses and buildings. So we have reconstructed. So lately, Pinoy signed the post-disaster needs assessment, the 11.2 billion pesos here in the northern Cebu during his SUNA last week or last month. So nagsasign na siya. That PDNE is being spearheaded by Office of Civil Defense to conduct post-disaster needs assessment to the ground. To give those figure, because ang laking figure na ginawa ng LGU, we came in just to yung figure na malaki na binigay nila. Then resettlement, we have provision for livelihood. We have long-term provision for livelihood for those people affected by disaster. Then of course, we have this restoration and improvement of destroyed facilities. This form part of our long-term planning for disaster recovery and rehabilitations. Then, our objective for this is to build back better. Then, another challenge in the mitigation and prevention and mitigation, we have nationwide identification of assessment of hazards through MGB, common understanding of forecasting terminologies and system, we have that one. Kasi minsan hindi maintindihan as to the proclamation ng Pag-asa, iba-iba. Yung nangyari dun sa Tacloban, they are not being emphasized on the storm source. Ano ba talaga yung ibig sabihin ng storm source na yun? Hindi ba yan tidal wave, hindi ba yan tsunami or whatsoever? So mas malaki pa pala dun sa tidal wave, no? Then appreciation of risk factor and at the local level. So kailangan in the local level, we have to conduct risk assessment, hazard mapping, who are the vulnerable sector, then they come up with the risk factors in the local level. Then strict adherence to building codes. So pag strict naman yung ating pag-ano ng building codes, therefore most probably siguro konti lang affected for disasters. Then construction of flood control structures. So this force is being intervened by this our Department of DPWH, no? Then another challenges for preparedness, integration of hazard assessment into comprehensive land use plan, completion of local DRM plans, which is a mandatory, plus our local disaster risk reduction management office with management officer. That's a mandatory for the RA 121. We have organization of community volunteers. So training and equipment of responder enhancement of our coordination centers. Okay, so immediate establishment for the response ICS, this called Incident Command System. Deployment of trained and equipped responders during the disaster operation. Then we have the rationalization of humanitarian assistance and rapid needs assessment among national government agency, with the local government units, and of course from our international donor. What's the purpose of rapid damage assessment and needs analysis? It's to see to it for how many person, how many people being affected by that disaster, and they can fast track the response, the support from the national government. If their local calamity funds, the 5 or the 30% of the 5% calamity fund that they have as their funds are already exhausted. Kung hindi naman yun ma-exhaust, hindi naman, konti lang naman, they will go up to the province, then they will go up to the regional, then they will go up to the national, then the national will give the support down to the local government unit. So that's why we need to give the rapid damage assessment and needs analysis. Okay, so rationalization to access of our calamity funds para mabalik natin, ma-restore natin ang ating mga babangon daw tayo, no? From the new Bataan, sa ano to, sa Davao, no? For this, they have an access. All LGUs have their local 5% calamity funds. Then we have another considerations as our challenges. You have the creation of our local disaster risk reduction and management, our DRRM officer or offices. Then we have a plantilla positions for local DRRM office and personnel. So karon daghan kayong kinahanglan og mga DRMOs, especially sa mga local government units, because it's already a mandatory for the Republic Act 121 to have their office and their officer. SJ 26. Okay, clarify provisions of Section 22 of our 10121 vis-a-vis GED utilization of our NDRRM fund. Then we have completion of standard local DRRM plans when we have this limanizing DRRM terminologies. So dito siguro sa limanizing gawin natin malinaw, no? Kasi kung waray ka, di warayon mo ang ano, warayon mo ang yakan, then kung Ilonggo ka, then you have to make it Ilonggo so that the common tao will understand what you are talking about. Then, as I have said, the mandate for the conduct of earthquake drill, as we said, that building emergency evacuation plan with former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo is this, no? We are advised to conduct drills, no, every quarter. Then, building emergency evacuation plan on earthquake scenario. As our geologic hazard, we already visited 4 major earthquakes, no? The Philippines already visited 4 major earthquakes. From August 16, we have 7.9 intensity, no? Earthquake in Moro Gulf, Mindanao, 8,000 people died during this earthquake. But dili ang earthquake ang nakapatay sa mga tao, it's the storm surge, no? Tsunami na hit sa mga area that kills around 8,000 people. Then, we have July 16, we have intensity 8, 1,000 plus ang patay, 3,500 ang injured, and around 11 billion cost of damage in property and in agriculture. Then, the intensity 6.9 earthquake that hits Negros Oriental, particularly in Lalibortad and Gihulngan, no, that kills around 48 people or 58 people, no, and a massive destruction of properties. So, secondary to that earthquake that kills the people are the landslide, the two landslide that hits in Barangay Martilo, Lalibortad. Then last year we have October 15, 2013, intensity 7.2 earthquake that kills around 208 people, no? And 5,000 of that are injured. Then earthquake, so our reason to prepare. Of course, trending nga eh. Diba? As sinabi ko kanina, earthquake, because the other day, nag-shake kami dito. We have felt the intensity 2 earthquake. The other day lang, hindi pa siguro tayo dumating doon. But the epicenter of that earthquake is in Mindanao and Davao area. 5 ang kanila doon. Then we have series of earthquake happenings in, di ba, we have in China, we have in Chile, we have in because of countries are situated in the so-called Walang Kamatayan Ring of Fire. Okay, why we experience earthquake here in the Philippines? Because we are located in the west of the Pacific Ring of Fire, and this is very much famous for its very active volcanoes and very active faults. Asa ang Pilipinas, so di arata diri. So kanang mga black dots nga nakita ninyo, it's the faults sa Trinches. So mauna ang atong pinalanggang nasod. And we are situated in the area. So buti-buti na faults and Trinches. Earthquake occur within the archipelago every now and then, no? And mainly because our country is situated nga in two major tectonic plates of the world, the Pacific and the Eurasian plates. Then, earthquake faults and our earthquake generators are the faults, active faults and Trinches. As we can see this particular slide, we can see this bold red bound for Mindanao. This is formed part of the Marikina Fault. Okay, according to Dr. Solidom, we are already ripe for another shaking, major shaking, and he is not kidding, no? Okay, with 300 volcanoes, 192 of that are active, are not active, further classified as either potentially active or inactive. But if kaning 22 will, magtakod-takod na sila eh, magtakod-takod na sila. So that's why there is a form of movement. So from Mount Ararat down to Mount Budaho, ganun tayo ka-reach in active volcanoes. No? Equally divided yung 22 volcanoes natin. And proud to say, in Region 7, we have one active volcanoes, namely Mount Canlaon in Negros Oriental. So sharing is caring with Region 6. Sino ba tayo Region 6 dito? Sharing is caring. So dalawang affected if Mount Canlaon will erupt. So ano bang problema na maidudulot niyang mga vulkan na yan? Of course, our economic. The flights would be hampered. Our flights from different areas will be hampered because of the ashes. Then, the crater of that volcano is facing Toledo City. Of course, affected yun ang Cebu. Then, recent earthquake events all within the ASEAN region or the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire. We have Japan, Fukushima, in 2000. When was that? 2008, 2010. Then we have New Zealand, the Christchurch, wherein there are also Filipinos died during that earthquake. We have the Sumatran, December 26, 2004, that 300,000 people died. We have Chile, Haiti, Philippines, July. Then, of course, the Philippines last February and lately October last year lang. So ito yung pinaka major disasters, that is, and the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire. So in our country alone, we experiences 5 to 20 quakes a day. Maliit lang, no? Kaunti lang, damihan natin. But yun lang yung sinasabi ng PHIVOLCS eh. So earthquake records, thousands of earthquakes already encountered by our country since January 1990 until January 2014. So ganun kadami, thousands of earthquakes. But hindi natin ma-feel ang iba kasi they are just di ma-feel, but it registers sa kanilang Richter scale, kano sa PHIVOLCS, ilang gadget. Then we have earthquake, no? Prone area, kung asa mo dapit na regions, hanapin nyo na ang lugar ninyo. Kasi ang alam ko lang dyan, Region 7 eh. Okay. For Region 7 kasi, isa na lang yung hindi nag-move. Cebu. And we have faults in Cebu, Southern Cebu. Hindi ko naman matel when, kasi hindi naman ako si Madam Aurin. No? But there is really a right, fault that it's a blind fault actually. Lately. Ma'am? Walang 12? Well, alaudin nyo. Mali nang gumawa. Pero ma'am, no niya. Opo. So meron naman po, meron siguro pag-transfer na lang. May apology for the Region 11 Director Maso yung andun. Okay. So for Region 7, we have Cebu, Bohol, and Negros Oriental. Wala yung secure kasi malit yung secure, but masabi mo, ma'am, bali na lang sa secure. Mind you, people, pag mabalik mo sa secure, basig mo search, tsunami naman yung aabot sa inyo doon. So better stay in that place. Kasi ang Cebu kasi, as we imagine, Bohol kasi is malaking circle yung Bohol eh. So pag move ng 7.2 earthquake ng Bohol, of course na-feel yun, and we felt that one also here as 6.9, but Cebu is elongated island. So if mag-shake yung Cebu, probability is malakas, mas malakas. Kasi slim siya eh. Kung tabatsoy lang yung Cebu, most probably maka-resist siya for that particular shaking. But Bohol kasi, malakas na nga yung 7.2, how much more kung nangyari yung dito sa Cebu. Diba? Mag-shake ang tanan. Okay. So, shall we wait for these events to happen again before we ever learn? So, this is one I choose as our scenario for our workshop because ito yung trending. Kaya we will proceed to this particular, wala mo yung magawa, kaya mauman yung kong pipili. So, scenario on earthquake. But yet, this is just to ready or to prepare you in particular disasters. Then we have these stages, planning and planning. So, this one ba, ito bang sinasabi ko dito that you have to form your disaster management committee or your emergency response team is already formed in your respective regions, in your respective establishment. Meron na po ba kayong mga ganito? Wala. May tumango, meron namang hindi nagsalita. Duha lang na nakasabot or di maminaw. No? Nakasabot or di maminaw. But nevertheless, kung wala man, this is the time that you have to make this particular emergency response team. So you have to form your disaster management committee composed of several teams with specific tasking. We have that one, the duties and responsibilities of these particular teams. We have the first aid, we have the site security. First aid most probably include pwede na sa medical yan din. We have the site security, we have the safety team, we have the evacuation team, communication and damage control team, and you have to assign your overall coordinator as your incident commander or your marshal during emergency. Why we activate this one? Because we will focus more on the operation. Under the ICS kasi, operation is one of the general staff of ICS. So ito, mga gaway-gaway lang na yan. Okay, they will be giving you this presentation. So no need to write na lang siguro muna, just then we will go on. Kasi gamay ragid ang akong oras na. No, have the following information available yearly on your respective establishment as the number of occupants. We have the residents, the occupants, the residents with special needs. Bakit kailangan natin identify those people? Because they need our help. Hindi naman natin sila pwedeng dyan ka lang kasi lumbo ka. Hindi naman pwedeng gano'n. You have to help that one. As much as possible nga, pwede mo siyang dalhin, going to your evacuation area, do that. No? Huwag mong antayin na pa yung structural injury na kay safe na pumasok. get those, na-trap doon. Or kaya naman natin kargahin those people, we need that. Then let's seek the old and definitely able persons. Then we have to identify their locations. Okay, so next we have to afford the most recent ground or building layout plans of our establishment or our offices. No? Use this to identify the open spaces. Why we will identify our open spaces as part of our evacuation area. Then determine the total number of available spaces that can be used during of your each house or the building. Then determine how many person can occupy this open space. Siguro sa inyo, for those not in the highly urbanized city which is close tayo, but who are familiar with University of Cebu. Marami. University of Cebu has 17,000 students every day from 7 to 9 in the evening. One time we conducted drill. Even if pagpalabas ng mga estudyante hindi kaya na using. How much more if we will put the people, that students in the evacuation area. They don't have evacuation area. Why? Because they are surrounded by buildings. Then, wala tayong magawa nun. Sabi ko nga, PSG. What is PSG? Pagbuot sa Ginoo, kung buhion matagdili. Because of that, di ba? Kayo naman, pag gusto nyo namang mag-expand na kayong mga schools, situate naman na safe naman yung mga students. No? Kasi ang mangyari niyan, pag nangyari yung lindol, hindi makalabas lahat ng estudyante. We take around 3 hours to evacuate those students. Ang ginawa nga namin, supposedly we will conduct the head count. Wala na kaming ginawa. Pinauwi na lang namin because of the traffic. Nag-congest na yung Kulon area. Nag-congest na yung San Siangco. Wala pa na nagawa sa mga estudyante. PSG, ingon si konsihal, tumulak. Kung babalikan na sila, kay kasabang taliliyo na sila sa ano, kung taugma kita nakakause sa traffic sa Kulon. Okay, this one. This is for highly urbanized city, but you people living on, di naman cities pa rin, but not this highly as urbanized sa Cebu, siguro dako ang atong evacuation area. Then obtain your layout or floor plan for each building that shows the rooms, the corridors, and your staircases and your exit points. Don't get organized because proper planning and organization is the key to an effective disaster prevention program. So this is now your disaster management committee. No, simple lang yun siya. We have the first aid evacuation team, fire safety, communication, and security. Then you have to make your own overall coordinator. Take note of this evacuation. You have to prioritize on what to evacuate. Sino ba yung i-evacuate natin muna? I never seen you did not evacuate our pets or animals, but yet we have to prioritize our, identify our priorities. Then we will touch this basic RECS organization, the simplified primary organizational structure. So the ICS composed of the command staff and the staff. We have the incident commander, safety, the liaison, and the information officer. The safety officer will be in charge on the safety of the overall operation. Then we have the liaison will in charge for the coordinating agency for the national agency and the other government agency. Then we have the information officer involved only on giving, disclosing information to the media, to the public, because if there are disaster is worst case scenario, ang mahitabo niya na flocking of media, newsprint, television to the areas affected by that particular disaster. So kung kinsa man ang matungnan nila dito nga ma-interview, mo na dito i-air nila sa media. Pero we have to see to it na in this structure, we have this information officer as our public information officer during disaster with the approval of the incident commander. Then under the general staff, we have the plan operations, we have the planning, we have the logistics, and we have the admin and finance. So we will fall down here in the operation, our emergency response team. So ICS functions as who does what. For the incident commander, under the command, he is responsible for the overall responsibility for the incident, and he will set an objective to a specific incident. For the operations section, the operations develops tactical organization and directs all resources to carry out the incident action plan during the operational period. For the planning develops incident action plan to accomplish objectives and maintain resources and situation status. So the planning section chief will make an plan, no action plan for the entire operation kung 12 hours ba na siya, kung 8 hours ba na siya. Then we have for the logistics section chief, he provides resources and all other services needed to support the incident. This is now the function of our logistics section chief. For the admin and finance, monitors incident cost and provide fiscal guidance, procures needed resources. So with this simplified functions of ICS, we already know kung saan tayo pwede lulugar. This is just a temporary structure to be activated during disaster operations. So incident, you have here the incident command system. So under for this, we have here the sub elements for operation. Dito tayo mag-focus sa ating operation. So ito yun. Operation sections. Andito na yung mga teams na pwede natin gamitin during our operation. So medical team. Okay. So this, just simply a glance of this. Your disaster control group will check, no, if good practice, we have good practice and not so good practice, particularly in the schools. So makikita natin what they have this. Actually, they've already seen this picture and they already make an action for this just to see to it nga, dili naman hazardous sa ilang mga students. For this, no, another building watching exercise. Okay, this one is a good practice. Why? Because they have this big space, enough space for evacuation. So this one, why is it that ingani ni siya? Why? Oh, delikado because we have the parts, no? Simply, dili lang yung earthquake makaano na, i-ring lang yun siguro, or something, konting ano lang, galaw lang mahuhulog yan, and who are those, these are the people affected sa ilalim. Then we have also this, electric poles and wiring, you have the gate shades. So another building watching exercise as our, identified as our danger zones. Then earthquake evacuation area for building should have the provision to utilize all available open space as vacant land, open parking area in the park and the playground, that's safe from falling debris and other earthquake-related hazards during emergencies. Ano pa? Then we have this, consider the number of persons in each building, then designate specific open area as their area in temporary refuge. Then, once an earthquake evacuation has been identified and assigned a specific group, the building administrator should then come up with an evacuation procedure using your area. So you have to take the safest or the nearest route going to your evacuation area. So ask ko lang, anito tayo ngayon sa Radisson. Have you ever tried to see kung saan tayo mag-i-exit if mayroong shaking? You have the exit window. We have on the second floor, you have to jump. Therefore, you will be injured, no? So we have to see, before entering into the building, look up. No, sa Itbulaga pa, look up kung asa ang evacuation at exit routes niya. Kaya mostly kasi mga baguhan tayo, ang alam lang natin yung entrance. Paano pag may disaster, saan tayo? What if may bombing, bomb threat? Tapos yung bomb threat naman is nasa entrance, lalabas ka pa doon. So mali. So hahanap tayo ng exit na pwede tayo mag-evacuate. Parang scenario lang yung sa akin. That's why kami we are trying talaga to, if you will be entering into the building, hanapin mo yung exit. Kasi ang exit yung makahilap sa atin especially if ang threat is nasa entrance naman. So, look for the exit. Kaya second floor, si ma'am mag-jump, patay tayo dyan, ma'am. Okay, then for the work area, we have to identify the safe and unsafe area, number of persons in that particular area. Then we have to identify possible nearest exit points, then time to take that person from the farthest points to the work area to the exit. So, the hazards of that area, no? Hazards. Then this one, doors, alleys, and corridor. Again, mo. Check how many person can pass the door or alleys or corridor. Kasi tayo ngayon, andito sa loob dito ngayon is around 100 plus. So, apat tayong simultaneous. What if may promotions? Saan tayo papasok? Saan tayo lalabas? Jump na lang pag may time. Diba? Then time, check for alternate routes. Kung wala man tayong makikita mga routes safe naman, so we will check for an alternate routes. Then check possible hazard that may block the area during your evacuation. So self-illuminating pathway, this one is, we are advised this in high buildings, yung mga tag-20-story na building. Why? Less cost, yeah, because ano lang siya, glow in the dark lang siya eh. Glow in the dark lang, so kailangan natin ito. Hindi naman siya masyadong expensive. Determine the flow of traffic from each building. There should be one-way traffic to prevent stampede. Then, one-way traffic persons shall walk in one direction only. Then another one indicates by arrows the flow of evacuation coming out for each building cluster up to their designated evacuation site. This will be suggested their great evacuation route for the building and occupants. So for these three buildings, actually we have to put a signage, no? Arrows going to a safest evacuation area. So with these arrows, hindi na sila mahirapang pumunta doon sa kanilang respective evacuation areas. Then prepare the final evacuation routes and orient everyone about the drill that you are going to conduct in your respective localities or establishment. So we have here the earthquake survival kits, which are very important during emergency. Every establishment has this supposedly earthquake survival kit or the medical kit that the ratio is 1:50 people. Muna yung ratio na to. Sa standard lang, pwede man na 1:100. Ang problema na, pag walang laman yung iyong kit, ano ba yung lagyan mo ng bandage, no? So, we have to see to it also na mayroon laman yung ating mga kits. Then we have this 72-hour survival kit. Ito naman 72-hour survival kit, pwede na natin siyang masave for 3 days. No? Per person. Per person lang yan. Kasi waters, no, we have this. We have emergency clothing, we have important documents, we have the flashlights, of course, communication devices, we have signaling devices, and of course, our ready-to-eat food, then our first aid kit. So, you put that one in one bag, then during emergency, simply grab that one, then evacuate. That's the simplest thing to do. Okay, orientation prior to the conduct of the drill. Of course, give specific instructions, no, about what to do as soon as the shaking stops. Like drill man yan, we have to be alert. Then listen to the marshal's instructions. Walk out to the house or the building in an orderly manner. Do not panic. Do not rush to the exit. Be watchful and alert for falling debris while walking on alleys and street. Sinasabi pa dito, do not run, do not push, do not talk, don't return, and don't bring your things outside. Why? Because tayong mga babae kasi mahilig tayo paglapag natin ang ating bag, kalat lahat, labas lahat, pag itinae, labas lahat. And during emergency, maghipos pa ka, wala na, you have no time. So therefore, you have to evacuate, do not bring something. Wait for the structural engineer. No? So this one, quietly but quickly, proceed to the designated evacuation area and wait for further instructions from the marshals. Then reiterated again, never go back to the house or the building. Once outside, building should be inspected first by an engineer for possible damage. No, kung di ganina siya ma-inspect sa engineer, do not go back yun. No, ayaw good go back because aftershock will come anytime. Hindi mo naman ang hid. Alato pa si ma'am sa sudit sa kung mag-aftershock. Aftershock will come anytime. O dili gyud na siya makaingon nga tuwa ka, so spare ka niya. That's your time na PSG na puntaan. Okay. So this one kasi simplified na to siya and what to do. Then makita na to diri the site, no? When constructing a building, determine if the site is along an active fault or prone to liquefaction or landslide. No? Use proper structural design and engineering practice when constructing a building. Then evaluate the structural soundness of the buildings and their important infrastructures. Then Okay, this one, identify relatively strong parts of the building. So, sa mga mga strong parts of the buildings nga pwede na itong makuhaan. Okay, ma'am, we have the door jambs, we have the elevator shafts, or we have the sturdy desk or table. We can take refuge during emergency. Then learn to use the fire extinguishers. We have the first aid kits, alarms, and emergency exits. Ano pa? So we have this, no? Meron tayo sa mga bahay natin dito, ito lang, wala ito. Ito lang, no? Start with the furniture stove, walls to prevent toppling or sliding, then store breakable items or harmful chemical and flammable materials, and the lowermost shelves. Then turn off gas tanks when not in use. Keep heavy materials in lower shelves. Then check stability of your hanging objects and maintain an earthquake survival kit. Balik-balik. No, sige lang na balik-balik. Then during disaster, you have to protect your body from falling debris, no? By bracing yourself under the sturdy desk or table. Then see to it that ang imong ulo nakagawas just to take a look at or picture out of what is happening around. Ayaw talikod, kapag linin mo, wala na kayo kagawasan because you already being trapped inside of that building. So another one, when you are outside, get away from the lines, post walls, and other structures that may fall or collapse because that lines and post might be alive pa because pa nagiputol sa vehicle. So therefore, tendency na pag kita malabtikan, goodbye. Okay, then stay away from buildings with glass panes. Because if during shaking, talbugan na siya, no, ang mga window panes. Do not attempt to cross bridges or overpasses which may have been damaged because bridges and overpasses are infrastructure. Therefore, we have to consult the expertise of our structural engineer for that. Then, during run away from the shore towards a higher ground. A higher ground lang naman, hindi ko naman sinasabi pumunta kayo ng Marco Polo for that. Because of the earthquake last year, the 7.2, 6.9 earthquake in Negros, nahitabo mag-good-night tsunami pandan. Di ba? Sa Osmeña Boulevard. Why? Because some people shouted nga naan ako yung si tsunami. Ang nahitabo nagdinagani ko ng mga tao. To the point na mura nagsinulog na going to uptown. Ang gingan naman dili, run away towards the shore on the higher ground. Because second floor the building, if not tsunami, especially we are an island provinces. We are surrounded by an islands also. Di ko naman expect ang tsunamis nga 20-meter high pareha sa Japan. Japan is facing Pacific Ocean. Therefore, they experience that high tsunami. But kita mo diri, we are island eh. So maliliit na, tsunami din na ito. No, tsunami. Gamay nga tsunami. No, but we will not, dili na po palibrihon, no? But we have to be aware. We have to be vigilant of the possible scenarios. Then, if you are in an open mountain or near the signal slope, stay away from this because they may be affected by landslides. No? Hopefully, mga ito. Daghan yung kayo secondary effect of earthquake. So, daghan kayo tagbantayan. Isag na pa dito sa bukid, no? Chances are sunod-sunod na nagyapang nag-disasters. Then after disasters, okay, get out calmly in an orderly manner. Use the stairs, do not use elevators, and check yourself and others for injuries. Then dust, clean up chemical spill, toxic flammable materials, and check for fire and if any have it controlled. Then check water and electrical lines for defects. Then do not enter partially damaged buildings. No, strong aftershocks may cause this building to collapse. Gathered information from a battery prevention instruction from our battery-operated radio. So, gamit pagyapon kayo itong mga radio ng atin ng gadget because we already have iPad, iPhone, Samsung Galaxy, whatsoever. Pero balik yapon ka sa karaan. Magkubaon na matumba ng silsay, wala ay signal. Diba? So, battery-operated radio. Yapon ng atong gamiton. Then, obey public safety precautions. Do not use your telephone to call relatives and friends. Our Disaster Prevention Authority may need the line for emergency assistance. Then do not use your car and drive around the areas of damage because our damage assessment team is ongoing during that time in order to give us the clear picture of the disaster-stricken area, not unless kung ikaw ang nagkinahanglan og assistance o ikaw mo'y dadonon sa hospital. Then take with you your earthquake survival kit, which should contain all necessary items for your protection and comfort. Then leave a message of asa ka pa daw, especially ang imong area is affected because ang imong parents, relatives, and friends might panic. No, panic sila, then mag-rush sila pa doon. So, important thing, I have to leave a message where you're going. So, now we will be simplified on the phases of the drill. Simply is the sounding of the alarm because we indicate that the building is shaking. So, sound the alarm. Sounding the alarm will take for about 60 seconds or 1 minute. That indicates that the building is shaking. So, our response would be to perform that duck cover and hold position under the sturdy desk or table and remain in that position until the shaking stops. When the shaking stops, that's the time you have to evacuate the building using your predetermined routes going to your evacuation area. Then you have to assembly to your evacuation area, designated evacuation area by section or by department. Why? Because during the head count, very important ang head count. Why? Because kung naay kulang or somebody is not yet counted, they are considered missing. So that they will report to the incident commander that their office mate or seatmate are not around, therefore they are missing, and they are left behind inside the building. An AC for the incident commander to command his search and rescue team, the medical team to get ready once the building is being inspected by an engineer. So, pwede nang balikan sa atong mga responders. So, atong mga responders, rules are critical and very risky. No? So, they have in the headcount mag-yun. In headcount kasi makita natin kung where in particular department sila na-trap. Like for example, kung sa maintenance, so during sa atong rescue, the people will go directly, the rescuer will go directly to the maintenance department. Not at least kung naglabot siya itong mga tao. No, so other siya pangitaon sa accounting, ganun pasweldo na siya, patay din siya makuha dito. That's the purpose of headcount. Then the last one is evaluation. In evaluation, we have to have the evaluation right after the drill in order to see to it na ang atong drill is proper. O napay kay gusto mo mahitabo nga wa naman nagawa dito sa drill na yun, you have to do that in some other drills. Then we have to check ano ba yung mga lapses na nagawa natin. We have to check the one in the future drill. So simply this is the phases of an earthquake drill which we were using later as our scenario. Okay, in summary, the Philippine archipelago lies the Pacific Typhoon Belt and the Pacific Ring of Fire. This geographical location makes the country highly exposed to both hydromet and geological hazard. The country has one of the longest coastline, which is twice that of the US, with 20 typhoons and 300 volcanoes. Kita mo naman, ang ganda, no? Our exposure to natural hazards makes the Philippines vulnerable to natural cause of disasters. Then building emergency evacuation plan on earthquake scenario. We need that. Then incident command, the basic structure of incident command system, the structure of emergency management team or your ERT organization. Let's compose all my presentation for this afternoon. So with that, we cannot prevent natural hazards. It's God's way of reminding us, but we can prevent their effects from becoming a disaster. Therefore, preparedness is a must, or disaster risk reduction is a must. So we have to act now. Why wait for tomorrow? Well, in fact, you can do it today. Then, prepare for your own survival, survival of your employees, survival of your tenants, survival of your patients in the hospital, especially for the students in school and the company and establishment as a whole. With that, mauni akong giingon in 2004, 300,000 people died because hazards we not prepared for results to disasters, and disasters bring about evil effects. But this, we are living with risk, of course. Lack of prevention is the death of our development, and disasters are the unpaid bills. This is the picture in Cagayan de Oro, during Cagayan de Oro flooding. Mauli, no? In courtesy of OCD Region 9, Region 10. Okay. Thank you and good afternoon.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma'am Riz. Before we go to the second part of the session, we will first have an open forum. So any questions or clarifications or even violent reaction? And you can make use of, you can make use of this microphone. Yes, sir? At the back? Na-akay question, sir? Wala question? Sige. Isa na ilang question or any clarifications pertaining to this afternoon session. That means, duharay reason anak, that means nakasabot siya or wak nakasabot. Naminaw o wak naminaw. Borgol na siya ang kuan, ang logic na behind. Any questions, clarifications? Sige, bukan na tayo. Ladies first. Si Ma'am Minaw, ladies ma'am. Sige ma'am. Okay, sorry. Sige ma'am. Yes ma'am. You can state your name.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Stacy Militanda from Cebu Institute of Medicine. I'm a student from CIM. Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I'm just curious. It's a very informative talk, and I believe that it's very important for everyone to know the creation of the team and all the preparations that we can do for our establishments, for respective establishments in schools. Could we, is there a way to access the information from your presentation and for the people here and also maybe for all the rest of the institutions that are present here?
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Actually, my presentation, I will leave my presentation as part of your document siguro na may I don't know if they're giving drives or CDs for this. Ibibigay namin yung aming presentation for that. Then, for those schools, no, actually, Cebu City is my area, particularly the entire province of Cebu is my area as the provincial coordinator. And we are emphasizing good in every school, especially mga high-rise buildings na school to have their plan on the building emergency evacuation. So Veles is one of that. I will be train the ERTO Veles. Then other schools pa na immediate train. But we will leave that presentation here for your Thank you po.
I was thinking, for example, do you have a website for everyone to access? Or can I working on something like that?
Yes, good afternoon po. Thank you sa question. Lahat po ng mga presentations ng lahat ng sessions will be available in the PCHRD website. Please visit www.pchrd.dsd.gov.ph. Lahat po sila ay i-upload doon sa aming website. Yun po. Downloadable po siya. www.pchrd.dsd.gov.ph.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. You have questions, sir?
I'm Lloyd O'Donnell from Baguio City. May I know if you have standard regarding the evacuation area or a certain population of school?
Okay, thank you so much, sir. For this standard, actually, if wide enough naman yung ating evacuation area, we have 1 meter, 1 square meter, tatlong tao lang yung pwede, as our standard, tatlong tao yung pwede mag-evacuate. But they can use as big space as they can if malaki naman yung ating evacuation area. But for here kasi, for the highly urbanized city, ang nangyari kasi sa as long as maka-evacuate yung mga aming estudyante, siguro mas-safe mas-safe na yan sa kanila. They can get outside that building, safe na yan sa kanila. Because nga dito, sir, we have no that spacious evacuation area. But we have 1:3. 1 meter, 3 persons po yung aming ginagawang standard. That's national, sir. Thank you po.
That was a very good discussion about earthquake preparedness. I hope we also have a similar one for flooding, or can we access?
Yes, ma'am, thank you so much. You're from Sibulan.
OCT po.
Oh, Davao City nga. Sabi ko nga si General Hero eh. Di ba, ma'am? Actually, ma'am, just visit our office in Davao, the Office of Civil Defense, located at Camp Lera po. Camp Lera sa Davao. We are situated inside the camp. We have the Office of Civil Defense Region 11. We have Office of Civil Defense also dito, regional office, ma'am. Our regional director is Lieutenant General Rirao. And we have also conducting series of trainings, especially what we are introduced here in Region 7. We have the same trainings. So that's coming from the National Office. Office of Civil Defense po, ma'am, sa Region 11. Thank you po.
Okay, any other question? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Jofi from Cebu Institute of Technology University. I'm just curious if, like you mentioned earlier on the, like this forming groups for institution, and then I'm just wondering how intensive is that, and also monitoring, you know, because we have this mentality sometimes, no, that okay, we are good in creating something, but with regard to performing the task, we get very much excited on creating something, and we miss the more important aspect, no, that is sustaining it. So I'm just curious if the government is also doing something on its monitoring, like if we have the disaster group in every establishment, no? Are they required to submit regular report on the update and what has been done and the training, or sad to say, more often than not, the position has become very ministerial?
Thank you so much. CIT, Cebu Institute of Technology, sa may Enbacan. So actually, CIT is one of my clients during the orientation of disaster risk reduction and management. So I talked with engineer, the quad of CIT, ma'am. That was hindi naman siguro pa kanya. That was 4 years ago in 2010 man siguro to. And they strongly want to have an organized disaster risk reduction and management team, especially the emergency response team during evacuation. Why? Even if the government will not comply that one, we will not force you, no establishment to do that, but it's your responsibility, to secure the safety of your students, especially the students, the young ones, because ang life mo na to, our salary depends on the mga students eh. So therefore, in return of that particular salary, even if the government will not mandate that to do something about that, as safety lang, for our students, therefore you have obliged to do that. Just to say, first and foremost, safety of the students, inside the school, inside the hospitals, inside everything, the establishment that we have. That's why we are requiring, not naman imposing those, if dili yun siya ma-realize nga nami penalty sa inyo, ha? No, konsensya na nga eh, because this is commitment. This is not additional job for you. This is a commitment on how to help other people in times of emergency. By putting this emergency disaster team will ready us during emergency, automatic itong mag-activate without additional compensation. It's just purely commitment to the people of the Republic of China, out of Philippines, yan. So, mga commitment lang yun na siya nato. But nevertheless, you have to make your own like memorandum or you have to make a decision that that is your mandate. You have your duties and responsibilities for that man. We will not forcing everyone. Kay, kung maapitin na sila, I know they will go to OCD. They will seek our help. And that's the time. Because serving, no, considering Region 7, we are serving 7 million plus Filipinos sa Region 7. So, pwede naman nating tulungan, no? Just send the request to us. Kung kaya na ko, agtawon kada aglaw ta ng establishment, I will do that for the sake of safety of everybody. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Jessie Francis, and the former president of Philippine Nurses Association. I have shared this with the other group last year when there was an earthquake, when there was that Yolanda experience, and there was that ship pollution here in Cebu. PNA voluntarily responded to the needs. So we made psychological first aid. We filled out 63 nurses in Bantayan Island 3 days after the disaster. And so I have seen that the organization have the manpower resource that can really be utilized and are trained to respond to disaster. So my question is, how can PNA become an active member of your organization as an NGO so that when disaster comes, we can utilize the organization?
So, thank you so much, Doctor, for that question. Actually, that question falls already in how many NGOs that being, I don't know, we have encountered that questions before because of our law kasi as bata pa. Our law is 5 years pa next year. That law has the mechanism of giving those, we are the repository of the mga disaster volunteers. That's accredited community disaster volunteers in the community. So therefore, that's our work, no, as the OCD to see to it and to check for the capability of each national government agency, the community, the CSOs, the civil society organization, and like your organization, ma'am, to have your people, no, to be submitted to us also the names, but for the law kasi is meron tayong mga lapses for the laws. And year 2015, we have to sit up for the sunset review. Sunset review rin tinatawag dun sa IR because the laws have its own lapses. Well, in fact, I will proud to admit that one of that is the mechanism on for the disaster, for the community disaster volunteers, paano namin sila i-accredited? Well, in fact, we are the one, the OCD is in charge for that particular specific yun sa distorya ni Doctor. But unfortunately, mga ikog pasaylo for that because we still revisit the law, then among butangan na siya mechanisms on what is the mechanisms on that particular mga disaster volunteers. We appreciate good the help of others because di na kaya sa government to help in disaster when it comes to large impact of disaster. No, name one katong Yolanda lang good. We have lots of mga civil society organizations, mga volunteer groups na nag-work as a hero during that kind of disaster operation. So na ko anak na to murag na mislead na sa law. So hopefully naka-craft namin for the ano tong law sa sunset review next year siguro sa among IRR sa atong implementing rules and regulations. Daghan yung kayo ano lapses ang laws karon ano man because sa medyo mo sa is mga sunset reviewer na nasa kon karon data. So next year amo nag-revisit ma'am. So may apology for that. That's our work no kanang i-accredit yun na ng mga volunteer. In fact, our NSTP students, mga first year na to sa college students are one of our mga disaster volunteers during disaster operations.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, what we did last year was, we cannot just come
Inside a community without a network, with a recognized organization. No? So what we did was we voluntarily go to the Department of Health, offer our help. So it was the Department of Health now who facilitated for us to go to Bantayan Island to provide the necessary relief activities. And so, but you know, I had that feeling that we have to voluntarily come and offer our help. Whereas if PNA would be officially accredited organization outright can tap us in times of disaster and emergency without waiting for that major organization to utilize us. And I have seen that nurses can be a very potent force that can provide a lot of services during disaster. So we are very useful, and there's so many of us. We're just waiting for you to tap our resources.
Yes, ma'am, thank you so much, and that is really being recognized for the Office of the Civil Defense from the national down to the regional offices. And we are also tapping the Department of Health because DOH also is one of the member of the National Disaster Council. So good ang inyong action, ma'am, for that because health is the right agency na pwede natin kita when it comes to health aspect. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Annie Salasha from Cebu Institute of Medicine. I'd like to thank you so much for that very comprehensive lecture. But I would just like to ask, because most of the organizations that for emergency or for disaster risk reduction is in schools, in establishments particularly. But is there something being done in the community, like in the barangay level, those who are not even in establishments?
Thank you so much, Doctor. Actually, we will be strengthening about we have actually disaster management committee in the barangay, headed by the barangay captain, wherein they will form also the same, no? Ang tawag lang sa ila is disaster control group, wherein we have also the teams, no, sa ilang barangay to have activated during emergency because they are the front line of a disaster. Then lately, not lately, but years ago now, we already trained these people in the ground to have this community-based disaster risk reduction and management to involve hazard mapping, risk assessment, vulnerable sectors affected for that particular, come up with a contingency plan. So, appeal, this is form part of a module lamang for the 3D or the 5D training for the contingency planning workshop. Padayon pa siya, ma'am, karon. Actually, ongoing na yearly, so other barangay, then if naana sila, we have to revisit that one. If the members in that particular ERT or disaster control group is already nag-retire na or nag-release na or something na, so that ma-revise na siya, ma'am, then that plan would mahimo na nato ng working plan during disaster operations. Ma'am, answer po.
I'm Maurice from University of Cebu. So my question is, are there any bills that are being passed in the Senate regarding the privileges of environmental refugees? The environmental refugees I'm referring are the victims of disasters like earthquakes, tsunamis, and hurricanes. So are there any bills that are being passed?
Bills, thank you so much, ma'am. Bills, actually, the bills is, before, bisag wala pa tayo bills na, that's the challenge of our local chief executives. Unsaon nila pag-put into safety ang ilang mga constituente. So, as my presentation na a while ago, my slide states na kung prepared ang imong local government unit, prepared ang imong barangay, prepared ang imong mga tao, prepared ang imong mga constituency, siguro no need to have a bill for that. No? Sa ako lang. Sir, sa palihog ko, sir, murag kulang pa din.
Regarding the bill, I was referring to a law that is being passed because in Japan, as what I have read from a journal, they're using the term environmental refugee for victims. So, for example, a disaster happened in Leyte. So, of course, they're not. I mean, let's take the example that had happened in Leyte, in which there were evacuees since the prisoners broke out from the jail. So since at that time there was a disaster, so some of the evacuees reached Bohol. So are there any laws that are being passed since they are prisoners and they managed to escape the prison because of a natural disaster? So are there any laws or any bills that are being passed in the that are being passed if pwede ba sila, like if they reach Bohol, so are the officers or the police in Bohol, are they going to intervene regarding the prisoners that escape, something like that? Are there any bills?
So, ang imong concern, ma'am, is regarding for those people na prisoner tapos gipa-escape siya.
Regarding the environmental refugee is a term for evacuees or victims of disaster, the general term for disaster. So are there privileges for them that are being passed on the Senate or Congress regarding if, like for example, pwede ba sila makabalhin sa usa ka lugar for a duration of time, and after that, if okay na ilang place, makabalik din sila sa ilang place, or they can stay good for in that place because kanang guba na ilang lugar, or something like that, since our topic is all about disaster.
Okay. So, klaro ba itong question, ma'am?
If you are referring to, for example, for Yolanda victims, like from Tacloban to Cebu, then back again to Tacloban after few months, they are considered as environmental refugees.
What happened during Typhoon Yolanda? The victims were evacuated to Cebu, to Manila. It's the responsibility of the local government units. So no need for a bill regarding that one.
Is it related with, yes ma'am?
Now, according to the news, in relation to the prisoners, because I think there was a case that there were prisoners in Ormoc, in Tacloban, that were released during that storm surge. And so what happened was they were offered number of years credit if they return back to jail. Yeah? And those that did not surrender were captured anyway, and they were returned back. So that's, they were released because they have to save the life of those prisoners. Okay, the offer was, if you come back, you get 5 years less, 10 years less of your punishment or whatever. But that's the LGU's prerogative, no? Yeah.
So it's not basically a law?
No, it's not a law. It's not a law. It's not a law.
Okay, ma'am, did it suffice your question?
Did it answer your question, ma'am?
Actually, the law is RA 101 to 1. No, actually, our law is RA 101 to 1. It's state all. No, kaya lang for kabata sa law, we need to revise that law and put all unsa pa akong gusto mahitabo for that particular law. Para kanang law, mao man na gini atong manimong Biblia on disaster risk reduction.
Good afternoon. I'm Narisa Francia from the University of the Philippines, Manila. So I would just like to ask what kind of framework we have now regarding collaboration and coordination in terms of emergency and disaster. Because in the past, I think during the time when we had Typhoon Haiyan, I think many organizations, local, international, NGOs, like to help or offer their first aid. But then there was some sort of lag in the delivery of services. So what do we have now? What kind of framework do we have now to ensure the timely delivery of emergency and disaster health delivery?
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. This is just ito lang yung parang as far as my understanding on this framework is concerned. We are actually linkage from the international organization. Wherein, first and foremost, if hindi na natin kaya yung disaster, that's the time we have to appeal to the President make an appeal from the international member country. We have the AHA, we have this ASEAN for ADMIR, we have ADMIR, and we have this Yugo framework of actions which we anchor our RFN 1-to-1. So with that, we will wait for the appeal of our President if hindi na natin kaya yung disaster na nangyayari sa ating country. So, that linkages kasi is, we have the presentation for that linkage, but hindi ko kaya i-elaborate lahat, hindi ko na-memorize ang daming ano yun. We have mga partner agencies from other ASEAN countries, and we have the protocol and how to activate that one during emergency situation. We have the process, we have the SOPs to follow for that particular, in seeking assistance from other countries, especially the ASEAN member countries. Hindi ko siya ma-elaborate ngayon, but we have that. We have the SOPs, no? Mostly kasi nag-a-attend yan is our mga top brass from the Department of National Defense. So yung umaabot lang sa amin dito is yung cascading, especially down to the barangay level and what to do under preparedness and capacity that LGUs when and times of disaster. But for that higher na mga SOPs, baka magkamali ako masabi ko dito. So I would say na hindi ko pa siya but we have that SOPs and linkages going to other countries. Thank you.
One more question before we go to the second part of the session.
Good afternoon, Ma'am. I'm Nico Inong from Cebu Normal University. I would just like to ask about what's the protocol of what's the protocol if when the local risk reduction management team is also the victim, cannot be mobilized because they are also the victim of the disaster, and because this is what we have observed from Typhoon Haiyan. And can you please show us a concrete picture of what happened in Typhoon Haiyan?
Okay, thank you so much, little gentleman, for your question. Actually, for the RFN 1-to-1, we have section 15 for RFN 1-to-1. Who is in charge of barangay? It's the barangay captain will oversee the operation. 1 or 2 barangays, it's the municipality or city mayor will oversee the operations. If one or two regions, it's 1 or 2 provinces, it's the regional office will oversee the operations. Then if 2 or more provinces or regions will be affected, it's the concern of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management. So hindi natin masabi na walang magawa, maging helpless sila because magkakastay tayo sa taas and they will help us down the ground. Kaya we need really the line for mobility for that, as fast tracking the information coming from the ground to the top, then the return back of that information with the help of the national government agency to the ground. Ang nangyari lang kasi doon sa Haiyan is overwhelmed. Sa akin lang, overwhelmed sila doon sa disaster because they did not anticipate that particular huge disaster that would hit their area. Kasi ang nangyari doon, storm surge yung very But if typhoon alone, kaya nilang i-resist yun. I grew up in Leyte in Region 8, and signal number 1 and number 2, maligo kami nag-uwan, maligo kami nagdagat. That's how resilient ang mga taga Region 8, no? But for that, they did not anticipate for the storm surge. That's why we urging jud katong limanizing of the words, especially the bulletins from the Pag-asa, southeast of eastern monsoon, diba natin mga intertropical convergence zone, which is di naman masabot dito sa ground. So, mo dyan ay atong gipanghinusgan karon sa ubos. No, kami sa ubos, dukhan na mo, yakan na mo with Pag-asa and other government agency to have that realized good, especially sa tao nga dili man gud nato makuan limanize binisayon warayon ilunggo nato. So that's our standard operating procedure when it comes to disaster operations. Thank you.
And additional, and also with the coordination of the schools, like for example in our schools, we already started having a disaster management up in the northern part of Cebu. particularly the Medellin, and we are also starting making or disseminating the essence of contingency plan, because this time they were still not that really knowledgeable in making or in terms of having those contingency plan, especially that those areas up north are very vulnerable, just like what happened to the previous disaster that struck the northern part of Cebu. So it is also, since, like, for example, in the College of Nursing, different colleges of nursing, we also urge those people there to disseminate the importance of disaster management, particularly sa inyuhang kanang sa atoang community health nursing, and even sa atoang COPAR, or even sa atong mga extension programs, because these are very essentials, like what we do in the College of Nursing, also in Cebu Normal, and also in other colleges of nursing as well. Okay. Sige, we will go to the second part of our session. So we'll have a workshop, or we will have a mini drill regarding the session, regarding the topic that was discussed. Alina lang, before we're going to give the instructions or further instructions, form a group according to your preference. Maybe sa inyong institution, much better sa inyong institution, para at least makahimong mo yung own organizational plan or further instructions that we're going to have. Yes, pwede siya, kung wala may institution, then you can have other institutions which are also near in your near sa imong vicinity or near sa imong kuan, sa imong region ninyo, kana siya. Okay, so let me see. Raise down your hands who are already forming their own group. Just a representative from the group. Okay, because we are going to give you a copy of this, then later na instructions. Sige, group mo. Okay, there. And later you can make use of, do you have your own laptops? Kasi nagdalag laptops. Wala? O sige. Naami dito Manila paper. Ha? So we'll go back to the very basics.
Indigenous material.
Ano siya? Isa kayo na ilalim. Group mo. Sige. Isa kayo ilalim dili. Okay. Isa kayo ilalim dili. Dili. Dili siya. Sige. Here. Parihara mo. Here. Asa yung ka-group, ma'am? Yes. Okay. Kamusad. Here. Sir? Ma'am? Kisa pa yung wala. Okay. Kinsa pa? Sir? Doon. Okay. Anyone? Yes, ma'am. Sir. Wala na? Wala na? Okay. Representative from the group, if you don't have any laptop or computer or tablet or capsule whatsoever,
capsules?
Yes. You get one here. Manila paper. Yes. And the metal pen. Tablet. Yes, I think so. Okay, here. This is better. Okay. Okay. Kinsay wala kinsay wala pa. Wala paper, pencil pen. Sir? Kinsay wala pa. Okay na? Okay na?
Okay, our workshop for this afternoon is Rizal earthquake. So we will just focus on the activity instructions.
Sorry.
3 questions lang ang atong fill-upan, no? Number 1, working as a team, drew an ICS organizational chart for the positions needed to be filled up in the first 22 hours. So, you man ka during first 22 hours, no? You ta, but still we have to activate the ICS organization. Huwag naman yung masyadong grabe kahaba, no, na as in, wala katapusan na yun ang atong disaster operation. Simplified ICS organization. Iputan ka to diha sa charts. Then number 2, identify the structures of your operation sections. Unsa man yung mga structures nga pwede na to i-activate during the 24 hour sa pag-occur sa Rizal earthquake. No? Then number 3, start the process of filling out we have the form, but yet wala man na po diri ang natay form diri, then we have to, unsa man ning ICS form 201, it's the sketch map. Map na siya sa Rizal wherein the earthquake is occurred. So, himuon nato lang na siya, then we have, I think, mga 30 minutes for that, then we need a representative to present their output after 30 minutes. Pwede? Pwede. Okay, sige. Sige, but you can more focus lang on the medical aspect, ha? Ayaw lang mo touch, for those from the medical practitioners, you can focus on the medical aspects, but for other nga, nakahuman mo sa medical, pwede yun mo apil-apil dito sa others. Okay, go. Go. Thank you.
Mic test. Each of the papers that you receive has 4 pages. Upat kabuok have 4 pages. Upat, no? Okay. So again, as being mentioned by Ma'am Risa, this is a situation pertaining to Rizal earthquake. So the one that you're going to do, or the one that you're going to make, has something to do with this situation. Okay, so sa Rizal earthquake. And on the last page, you have the current organization. I think that if you have questions pertaining to the errors on this, particularly on namin yung madidi masabot. So, for example, on the left part, that's planning. Ma'am, we can show the, yes. Okay, so this is only an example, but we are going to show this later because later on, once you go out of this institute of this building, then once you are already in your institution, then you can also make use of this when making your own ICS structure. Sige. Okay, so for any references, it's being posted here. Kana siya, kung dili kayo maklaro dira sa inyong paper. Operations, logistics, planning, operations, finance. Okay. Sige, sure. You have 15 minutes. Sure. Actually, sa review mo, pero di ba mo bulong ko, pero cold water. One way to 10, more than 4, hindi. 10 minutes for them. Okay. You have 7 more minutes. Just a reminder, when you're going to present here, after your presentation, then we can automatically give you the certificate. But also, please give your evaluation. And when you're going to give the evaluation also, especially in people who will not present here, especially you're going to give the evaluation outside, please indicate the title of the session. Like this session is on organizing. So please indicate on your evaluation sheet on the title of the session, because there are 4 sessions simultaneously happening. So the session is on organizing response to emergency and healthcare delivery. So you can place that one in your evaluation sheet. His question. hashtag health research PH as hashtag safe PH, hashtag PNHRSPH, and hashtag PLDT home fiber. Again, just a reminder, we are live at PNHRS 2014 healthresearch.ph. We also encourage participants to post via social media using the official event hashtags. That's hashtag health research PH, hashtag safe PH, hashtag PNHRSPH, and hashtag PLDT home fiber. And follow us on twitter.com pn slash PNHRSPH, and like us on facebook.com slash PNHRSPH, and pinterest.com slash PNHRSPH. So again, for that evaluation, please place the title of the session. And for those who could not present it here, on the output, you can give the evaluation outside on the registration area to receive your token. Okay, we have 3 more minutes.
I need Manila paper.
Oh, sure. Wala paper? Oh, wala pa. Okay, last 1 minute. Okay, timer stops now. But for others, you can still continue, but we need a representative to show your output here in front. Since this group is well represented from Luzon to Mindanao, can we start first with the representative from Luzon? Sige po. Yung ano po, yung taga Maynila, yung iba. Yes, from Luzon. Sige lang, kuan lang, whatever you have finished. Sino po yung mga taga Luzon dito? Manila. Luzon. Oh, may taga UP. The UP group. Yes. From Cebu. Cebu, majority. Import. Okay. Okay, if wala ay taga Luzon, if wala pa, then let's move to the Visayas region. Visayas. Any school will do. CIM, UC, UV, University of Bohol, from Iloilo, from Cebu Normal University, or other institution, PNA, Cebu chapter, Young Mind. Okay, can we have first this group from Cebu Normal University, Graduate School Department. Start. Yan lang siya. Alik na. Sige na. Okay na. Okay, a round of applause to them. Okay, so once you pass your output here, then automatic na siya na you can receive your certificate. And if you're going to pass your evaluation outside, then you can also receive a token. So the certificate is here, while the token is outside. See? Who are the members? Alitindog mo diri. Maniguro dito no. Alit diri ma'am. Okay ma'am. Okay, so these are the members from Cebu Normal University. They're the first presenter. A round of applause, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We're from Cebu Normal University, and basically, we try to answer all do the activity as guided by the instructions, the 3 instructions given. So, according to the scenario given, there are 3 priorities. First is to save and sustain lives. Second is to assess disaster impacts. And third is to ensure infrastructure and utilities that they should be maintained and restored. So, since the first instruction was to create the ICS organization chart. Okay, sorry then. So to create the ICS for the first 24 hours, here's what we prioritize. So first is, of course, there should be the leader, and since the scenario already said that they're going to be the incident commander, so also we need this safety. Actually, for the first instruction, we concentrated on the operations team. So we found it important that for the first 24 hours, the operations team mainly the first aid team, evacuation team, under which is the search and rescue team, should be established, and also communications team. According to the scenario given, basic according according to the scenario given, the statement that there was a report that some students may be trapped. And so that's why we had to prioritize first aid team and evacuation team should be established or created first. And then also basically communications, because as the police superintendent, basically the scenario created presented the situation where the overwhelming feeling maybe of those people in Hainan, they do not know where their family was, what happened to them. So the communications team that we created here was more for the internal, basically communications. For what we meant was basically, since the municipal hall will be like the heart and center of communications, both internal and external. And so internal meaning that there will be a list of victims as soon as possible that can be listed down. That's what we meant by the communications team. So basically that's the first, those are the priority things to be created for the first 24 hours. Also, since the situation or the scenario already gave us a list of resources and supplies, that's why we had the food supply team. Is there anything else?
And also to maintain the security among the on the damaged area. I think we have also to mobilize the site security team, just like I guess what I've heard in Typhoon Haiyan, the loss of security in the area is a great threat, because with this it's not just a what we're trying to avoid here is what we call this physical and all those what we call physical threats from the residents of that place, because again this is all real survival of the fittest. So I think at the end of the day each one of those victims will really try their best to be safe and survive.
So with the limited amount given, we hope we've answered the instructions first and second. So again, operations team for the first 24 hours, and also we struck the second instruction, which was to basically create or identify the structure of your operations section. So we go to the third one, start the process of filling out the ICS 201. We didn't have time to write it down, but basically what we did was, among the list, with the list given or provided with us, like for example, you have the 4 police units on the second page, all those resources that and supplies that are readily given, we distributed it among the different teams given. Like for example, under operations, we have again the first aid team. So under first aid team, we have the emergency medical task force. We allocated 2 ambulance units. We allocated 10 community volunteers, at least 10. And so also for the evacuation, security, search and rescue team, we have again 2 ambulance units, the search and rescue team, 1 fire engine, then of course the operator, the 2 earth movers, what else? So under the communication, we allocated 10 community volunteers. So that's what we did with the instructions provided in the scenario given. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. A round of applause. We will give the comments later. Okay. Supposedly, originally, we're supposed to detail first the different elements pertaining to the situation. But because of lack of time, then we'll just go directly to the presentation. You can have at least 3 to 5 minute presentation. So you go directly to your output. Then after that, then we can give the comments later in bulk. Okay. So Cebu Normal is first. Next, any volunteer? We have from the Visayas. We'll be going back again to Visayas later. Let's proceed now with Mindanao. I know there are people from Davao. My place, Davao. Ma'am.
You na you.
Sige lang, okay na. Okay na siya. Sige, later ba? Sige. Another, isa pa taga Mindanao dire. Mindanao. Wala pa. Sige, balikan this ma'am. Okay, balikan sa Luzon. From Manila. Luzon. Luzon. Sige na. Volunteer from Luzon. We have one from UP. I think usan to siya kabog, no? Ikaw ramam, no? Ikaw po yung taga UP. Ikaw naman isa. Dami kayo?
Dami kayo.
Okay. So, we have, I think, one from UP here, but nag-import yung ibang school dito sa Visayas para sa kabilang school. Okay, wala kayo taga Luzon? Sige, let's go back again to Cebu. Can we have from University of Cebu? Yes. From UC. Sige, present your output.
Palaban din ito nga nang...
Ma'am, taga-asa mo, ma'am? Yes.
Wala lang yun. Map sa situation, sa incident.
Sige,
like sa legal earthquake, di ba, Binay Municipal. Yes. The map of the incident.
So anyway, you can present your output in just a matter of 3 to 5 minutes. Or if you can present it less, then so much the better.
You cannot picture the incident without the map. So it's very important. Yeah. Even the coordinates. As to identify the map. Yeah.
Sample lang, sample.
In that place, hindi ko kabalo kung asa ka to go. Map. In every incident, map good enough. Anyway, mga bata mo, you still have a long run. Yes. Oh.
Good afternoon, guys. We are from University of Cebu, Manila. And here's our presentation.
So first things first, so we're going to clarify the situation naman, summarization. So North is since little gamay ra ang casualties sa North is more among center of operations. Next is East and the South. So dito man ang mas dagan gani of casualties.
Ayun iba Tagalog po.
So sa East and South, madami yung casualties. So dun yung may affected yung portion. So marami doon no in and out then sa as well as the East. So ang pinaka difficult situation sa Rizal is yung East. So we're going to
this is we came up with this organizational chart. We started off with our incident officer, Mayor, because we think that he knows what's really going on in the place because he's the mayor. So he knows how many people are there in a certain area. So that's why we placed him as an incident officer, and then headed with the police superintendents, the police units, and the structural engineers. Because in the situation, we found out that the east and west areas of Rizal is it can't be accessed because of the landslides. So our first agenda was to really clear out the highways so that help can be given to the affected areas. So and then we broke down. We had these resources and we broke down with search and rescue teams and the structural engineers, police units, and the medical task force. So we categorized them by specialization. Under search and rescue teams, we had firefighters, fire engines, and the construction foremen with their construction supplies. And we also categorized the structural engineers for the dump trucks, the earth movers, the front loaders, and the construction foremen, and with the police units. And the medical task force, the community volunteers, 200 guys, so we just categorize them by resources and the people who can address the problems during the given situation. And so that's it. This is our ICS organizational chart, and we just use the resources given to us and categorize it into something more organized.
Okay, round of applause. Yes, hand down. Go.
Okay, there's a few explanations on what these people will do. First is save lives, reach school. There are some people who were trapped there, so one police unit, front loader, liberator, and dump truck. So evacuation is the most important thing to do there, to move people from this school to the north, which proceed to west. Now, because there's no communication, so isolated place, we need to know what's going on there. So police unit, ambulance, and dump truck, we need to clear the pathways so that the operations can go on in that place. Then for east and south, dump truck, front loader with operator, ambulance, and 2 police units. Then after that, you'll have the reconstruction and community volunteers, food supplies.
Okay. Next, ma'am from Chonghua Hospital.
Last na Chonghua last.
Hindi pa, okay ra. Na kay concern? Concern? Okay, sir. At least in school, University of Chonghua.
So within the 24 hours operation, we need to activate the following in the ICS. First, we have the incident commander, the municipal mayor, or the city mayor, or the LCE, that's right in LGU. Then we need to have a safety officer to look into the safety of all the responders or volunteers within the community. Then the liaison officer who will do the coordination with our external NGOs, GOs, and other stakeholders also. The information officer should also be activated for the fact that the information officer will be the one to give information to media. Then on the box below, we need to activate only the 2 boxes, the operations and the logistics, because operations are the one who will do the movement within the ground. So logistics also for the fact that we have various logistics that will be received within the ground. It can be personnel or it can be other materials or supplies. So For the operations, we have first our medical team, the medical team. So in the scenario, the following resources already arrived at the scene. We have for our medical team, we already have ambulances, but there is no medical task force that arrived in the scene.